as always, to see so many smiling faces at our spring concert. Yes, thank you so much for coming. I'm Jennifer. I'm the music director of this wonderful orchestra behind me. And tonight we have a really exciting program that takes you all over the world. So we start with the Overture to the opera Prince Igor, written by composer Alexander Borodin. And this opera is about the Russian Prince Igor and his victorious campaign against the invading Polovtsian tribes. This was like in the 12th century. And one really interesting fact about this opera is that the composer, Alexander Borodin, was not actually a musician by trade. Like almost everyone behind me on this stage, he was a doctor and a chemist as his profession. And he was a really good one, too. He made all these discoveries in chemistry that probably you will study about, if not already. And he only composed on his spare time, which is really mind-blowing because he's well known for many of his symphonies and his string quartets and small things like this. So when he had spare time, he decided to start sketching out the starts of this opera, Prince Igor. But he was having a really hard time getting material out for this piece. And when he died very suddenly in 1887, two of his good friends stepped up, both also Russian composers, Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, who actually also was not a composer by trade. He was a Russian naval officer, talented people, and Alexander Glazunov, who was a very well-known composer. And they helped him write most of the music that remains today from this opera. Alexander Glazunov completed the overture, which you just heard, from sketches that Borodin had finished, and Rimsky-Korsakov basically orchestrated the entirety of the Polovtsian Dances, which is what you will hear now. In the opera, when we reach the finale of Act 2, we hear these very interesting, exotic-sounding Polovtsian dances. And what is happening in the opera is that Prince Igor is actually captured by the leader of the enemy tribe, only to find out that they're actually like-minded men. And the leader of the tribe offers a night of entertainment for Prince Igor and offers that he can view a beautiful night of singing, dancing, songs. And so what you hear in Polovtsian Dances are very characteristic episodes through the piece. You have different types of moods and energies. You have things like very melancholic melodies playing to very militaristic marches, all the way until we finish with very energetic, exciting dances. So, hope you enjoy. Yes, that is one peak of our concert in terms of energy. And then the next peak will come a little bit later, but that's a really fun one. We're switching gears. Our next piece is actually a contemporary piece by English composer Anna Clyne. She was actually our very own composer in residence here in the CSO this way for many years in the early 2000s. So we know her very well, but since then her music has been premiered and played all around the world. and all the major orchestras. This piece in particular means something very special to us. It's called This Moment. It was written in 2023, and it was inspired by Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away in 2022. And in her piece, she borrows a lot, or quotes a lot from the Mozart Requiem, which is quotes the Mass, but particularly from the movement Lacrimosa, which means weeping in Latin. And she contemplates very much on this Buddhist monk's words, which are this: the meditation on death is a very important meditation. When you meditate on death, you love life more and you cherish life more. These are very important lessons. This moment is full of wonders. Thank you. Now we are already, time flies, at our last piece of the concert, our finale. Total change of pace and energy. Our last piece is maybe the most well-known and also, in my opinion, one of the most fun to play, to conduct in the repertoire, really, and to listen to. It's Gershwin's American in Paris. So when George Gershwin was a young, budding composer, still already making a name for himself in the American Broadway and jazz scenes, he went to Paris, where really everything was happening, in search of more rigorous compositional training. He wanted to be a more serious composer, he wanted to be a better composer. So he went to one of the most renowned pedagogues of the field, Nadia Boulanger, whose students include, among many others, Daniel Barenboim, Aaron Copland, and Philip Glass. So very, very renowned teacher. And after reviewing his work, she actually turned him down. She said that she was afraid the rigorous classical training she would put him to would ruin his very fun and distinctive jazzy voice. So then he tried again and went to composer Maurice Ravel, who was one of the most prominent composers of his time, French impressionistic composer. And Ravel did the same thing. He turned him down for the same reasons. He said, why be a second-rate Ravel when you can be a first-rate Gershwin? So he didn't quite get what he wanted in Paris, but when he returned from his trip, he was inspired to write this piece, An American in Paris, which he wanted to imbue the listener with the atmosphere of the French world and the streets and the city. And it's a really, really charming, fun, bluesy, quirky piece. And it uses a lot of instruments that you may not see very often in classical repertoire. We start with a very easygoing walking theme in which you hear the sounds of the Parisian traffic, actually including maybe an instrument that only exists in concert halls because of this piece. Can we demonstrate? Taxi horns, real taxi horns. Is it possible to hold it up so we can see? Yeah. Really fun. There's probably only one set of these in Chicago, and we got them for these 2 weeks. Yeah. Then after the walking theme, we hear intersperses of jazzy themes, and this represents the pangs of homesickness that the composer was feeling while abroad. And it features very iconic jazz instruments. Ta-da! The saxophones, yeah! Which are also not that common, more common than the taxi horns, but not as common in the standard repertoire. So we have an alto sax, a tenor sax, and a bari sax. Very exciting. We have also interjections by the bass clarinet, back there, big guy. Ornaments by the xylophone. Yeah, fun things. And rarely do we see this, but solo by the tuba, all the way back there. We don't see that very often. So all of these unique, fun things are just crammed into this piece. It's really an American masterpiece, and we really hope you enjoy. You thought we were done. Now for the most fun part of the program, if you can imagine. Some of us were just waiting for the program to finish to get to this part. I'm just kidding. So we have a special tradition now that we have been going for a while. It's been really fun. It's been a great way for us to really interact with our community members you are the only reason we can do this. You're the only reason why we want to do this. And also maybe offer to the world, the public, an opportunity that they've never had before, that is very rare, which is to conduct the orchestra. So this is not a surprise to anyone because you all walked in through the door, but we were selling raffle tickets, which also helps us fundraise for things we need. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a drawing. So get your tickets out, get ready with your numbers. And when we pick our lucky winner, I will take him aside, give him a private coaching lesson with the baton. There we are, there it is. Ah, yes, these need to be combined. Can you please? Thank you. And don't worry, it will go very well. It will be fun. Don't be nervous. And then while we're doing that, we're going to have a couple remarks from our wonderful president. So here is the moment. Drum roll, please. Wow, lots of tickets. Okay, lucky number 472551. Who is it? There's also a second one. Wait. Oh, there we are. Hello. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Craig.
Yes.
And what brings you here tonight?
I went to Northwestern and I follow the band. I love it.
Woo!
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
In the band I know.
Okay. What did you say?
Trombone.
Trombone.
Oh, I studied engineering, electrical engineering.
An engineer who plays trombone from Northwestern, fan of the music, been a fan of us. Nice to meet you. Okay, I will pass this off. Here you go.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Milan Parikh. I'm a second-year MD PhD student and the president of the Northwestern Medical Orchestra.
And I'm Nico Kiriakou. I'm a mechanical engineer and NMO's vice president. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. We're absolutely thrilled to have you, and we're excited to be putting on such a wonderful performance.
Of course, none of this would be possible without the hard work of the NMO leadership team, and we'd like to acknowledge them at this time. We're so appreciative of the time and effort they have volunteered to keep this orchestra running and growing. You can find their names and roles in our program. Executive board members, please stand for some applause.
Running an orchestra of this size is quite the undertaking, so we are very grateful to have the tremendous support from a number of individuals and teams here at Northwestern and Shirley Ryan. A big thank you goes to all of them, and their names are listed in your programs tonight, and also a big thank you to the many others who have supported us along the way. Finally, we also have to thank the wonderful musicians on stage tonight. Our membership is extremely diverse, including students, physicians, nurses, physical therapists, alumni, and other healthcare workers and community members like myself. They have all taken hours out of their week to come here and rehearse. Thank you all so much for your commitment to the NMO. This performance and community event would not be possible without you.
Okay, I want to give a brief acknowledgement to two NMO members for whom this is their last performance. Previous attendees to NMO concerts may recognize Bettina Chung and Angela Yang as longtime presidents of the orchestra. They have now completed their training at Feinberg and are moving on to the next stages of their careers. We want to thank them for their amazing work that they've done while leading the orchestra and wish them all the best in their residency programs. Bettina and Angela, please stand for some applause. It should also be noted that Bettina is one of the co-founders of the orchestra. To tell you a bit more about that, I want to welcome to the stage NMO's other co-founder, Michael Huang.
Hey, hi. Hello, my name is Michael Huang. I am a third-year resident in internal medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. Yes, I did fly from Philly to Chicago earlier today to be here at this very special event. 8 years ago, I, along with Bettina, my good friend, co-founded the Northwestern Medical Orchestra as first-year medical students at the Feinberg School of Medicine. Thank you. 3 years ago, I was on this very stage playing my last concert with the NMO. And at that time, Bettina had recognized my contributions to the orchestra as a co-founder through the naming of the clarinet section. And it is my distinct honor and pleasure to do the same for her today. This plaque recognizes that in honor of Bettina's contributions to the orchestra as a co-founder, the French horn section will henceforth be named after her.
Okay, let's get this section wrapped up and let's get back to our encore. If you enjoyed what you heard this evening and want to see the orchestra, stick around for the long time. We're here in perpetuity, I guess. But not without your support. Please consider supporting us with a donation out in the lobby or using the link in the back of your programs. Please be sure to type in Northwestern Medical Orchestra. We also invite you to join us for some cookies in the lobby following the performance. Are we all set? Great. Thank you again.
So please welcome Craig in his conducting debut.